Mr. Deputy Chairman, as my honorable friend Shri Nair said just now that this bill is a good one so far as it goes, and it may add that actually what we have been demanding for a long time by way of such changes in the act has been embodied in it now. At the end of the year 1983, we did discuss in this House certain amendments to the Employees Provident Fund Act, and at that time, I had insisted that plantations should be included in the schedule of the industries which come within this measure. Now, at last, this has been done, and now the scope of the Act can be extended by the government to establishments or industries which are not, strictly speaking, factory industries. So I welcome this measure, but it has come very late. Though it has come very late, I do not say that this measure will not benefit the workers. It will no doubt benefit workers. But as my honorable friend has rightly pointed out, the pace at which progress has been made in this direction has been very slow. The manner of implementation also has been very slow, and unless those factors are taken into consideration, the good that will come out of this measure for the workers will not be very effective. As regards plantations, again after 1953, a long time has elapsed, and then in the last Industrial Committee on Plantations, it was agreed that this measure will be extended to the plantations. A large number of workers, nearly 1 million or more, who are employed in the plantation were denied the benefit of this act. It was agreed in August 1985 that this act will be extended to plantations. But even after that agreement in the Industrial Committee, in which the planters also were present and they also had subscribed to that agreement, such a long time had to elapse for bringing forward this amending legislation. Government has extended by notification the provisions of the Employees Provident Fund Act to factories and to tea gardens only recently, perhaps 2 or 3 months back. That could have been done immediately after that agreement was arrived at. In that matter also such a long time was taken by government, and it was necessary to amend the existing Parent Act. In 1953, when we had suggested the expansion of the number of industries in the first schedule, we also suggested to the government that this should take powers to do so, and that the powers which we were proposing to the government to take could be exercised in consultation with the industries and interests concerned through the industrial committees and other committees. But it has taken such a long time. The extension of the provisions of the Employees Provident Fund Act to only the factories and the plantations covers only a very small fraction of the plantations of workers. Secondly, besides the question of the pace of progress, there are some other questions also. There was an agreement in the Standing Labour Conference when this question was discussed that the provisions of this act will be extended to industries employing 1,000 persons, and the industries come under that category as, for instance, rice mills, cashew nut factories, coir factories and other factories. Then there are the seasonal factories. It may be said that work in these seasonal factories is of a seasonal nature, and therefore it is difficult to extend the provisions of this act to workers in those factories. But in that connection also, it may be pointed out that even these seasonal factories, the same workers are generally employed in the next season when the factory opens and begins to work, and it should be the endeavor of the government to see that the same workers are employed. Therefore, the break in the period of work need not come in the way of the extension of the provisions of this act to these workers. Anyway, it is good that the Government has taken powers to extend the provisions of this act to non-factory industries, and I hope these provisions will be implemented without further delay and that the pace will be speeded up. There are a few other points which I would like to touch. My honorable friend has already pointed out the question of forfeiture. Under the present scheme, a worker forfeits the employer's contribution of the fund not only when he retires or leaves the factory prematurely, but also in case of dismissal or disciplinary action. It is a moot point whether there should be this forfeiture even in the case of dismissal or disciplinary action, for the worker has been working there before up to the point of time when this disciplinary action took place. Often we have find that even in the industrial tribunals, they have come to the conclusion that the dismissal or disciplinary action was unjustified. Sir, as honorable members are well aware, the production of coffee is of great importance not only to the coffee consumers but also to the national interest of the country. It is a fact that not only the internal consumption of coffee has increased but also Indian coffee is loved for its quality in outside countries. Though it is not an export commodity bringing in foreign exchange in very large dimensions, it does bring in a fairly good income to the growers, and it is in our interest to develop the coffee industry. With that view, we have brought forward this measure, and we are making principally two structural alterations or amendments in the original scheme of the Coffee Board. Taking the amendments sought to be made by this bill serially, I would first invite attention to clause 6 of the bill, which deals with the structure of the new board. There is also the provision for the appointment of the chairman of the board by the government. This has been the subject matter of some controversy, as honorable members are quite aware, and I would like to deal with that matter quite briefly. I shall also be happy to give my reactions to such observations as may be made during the course of the debate. It has been considered in certain quarters that government, in introducing this amendment, is trying to do something unjust to the growers. Firstly, the original act contained a provision for the election of the growers' organizations by panels. That was the understanding underlying the amending bill. This is one sore point, and I might start with that observation from now. Really speaking, government could have absolutely no interest in affecting the growers adversely. We cannot kill the goose that lays the golden egg. If we kill the industry, no one could hope to have a development in this industry. No doubt sometimes things happened in the past and they made government come to the conclusion that the coffee board at that time did not do all in its power to see to it that the prices were under control. We have to strike a sort of golden mean. It is not that only the growers' interests are supreme, but I am quite sure that whereas the growers' interests have to be important and the interests of the consumers have also to be taken into account. Take the tariff commission for instance. It goes into the cost of production of the indigenous production and also finds out the import price of an imported product. If the import value of an imported article is rupees 30 and the cost of production of a local article is rupees 20, the commission tries to cover the gap of rupees 10 and add a little more so that indigenous product may not work with an initial disadvantage vis-a-vis the imported product. That is what they do. So in the case of productive industry, it goes without saying that the margin of the growers should be important and should be a sufficient incentive, but then we have to look at other factors also. Take the case of silk for instance. Silk is a relevant example. Supposing we stop all imports, the growers might get rupees 58 or rupees 60 per pound, whereas the tariff commission price would be round about rupees 32 per pound, giving a margin for the handicap sustained by local production. If price soar high, they have a deleterious effect on industry, though for the time being persons in charge of particular concerns may profit by it today and tomorrow.